Today on the Good Girls podcast, Kay and SJ are diving into Tradwife life and being a conservative influencer with Evie Magazine.
It just will come so naturally to us.
I know, we're just two Tradwifes in a pod over here.
We are technically Tradwives. Oh, wait, I guess we aren't
No,
Tradwives.
you're
Yeah,
not.
never mind.
Kay, you're not a Tradwife. You have a job. You have 0 milkmaid dresses.
You do not count as a Tradwife
So
at
if you
all.
haven't heard of Evie Magazine, it's been described as Cosmo for conservatives. I also feel like it's a sexy Tradwife magazine is another way to describe it. Because it's like sex positive, but by sex positive, they're very explicit about it being sex within certain bounds of like for married
Yes,
people.
you see it, and one part of you is excited. They're like, oh, okay, they're being like very sex positive. It's all right that it's more for married couples. That is those people's religion. And then you see things like, oh, like they don't believe in birth control and they go more by tracking your period as a
Yeah.
way to prevent pregnancy when it's not wanted. I go, okay, so you have to
Yeah,
believe
and,
it.
like, the co-owners of it, the Hugo Blooms, which is a married couple in their early 30s, the husband has another side business that's a period tracking app, but that is a front for selling you some kind of alternative birth control pill thing that based on what you can read on Evie's articles, I'm guessing it's some kind of nutritional supplement, all natural. They are a lot in this magazine about the pullout method and other kinds of not recommended by research methodology.
Yes, condoms and birth control, good things.
Before we jump into background about the magazine, I figured we'll familiarize you with the look and smell of Evie's content. So there was an article of 10 ways to feel sexier. So this is about how you feel sexier as a human being. What are some of yours, Kay, to see how well you stack up to Evie Magazine? Mhm.
Uh, Going to workout class, not because I expect like changes in body composition. It just makes me feel confident and strong.
Oh, you
Ooh.
actually did hit on an Evie one. It has a lot of like positive girl powery Cosmo powder puff content. I mean, not powder puff because that's very true, but self affirming kind of like, yeah, look healthy, feel healthy, blah blah blah. So okay, you did get
So,
one
and then
in
I
tune
kind
with Evie.
of wonder about this because I would say like wear lingerie or sexy clothes, but I actually feel like it's only when I'm already feeling sexy that I put it on. I don't know.
Oh, chicken and egg thing
Yes,
potentially.
I guess, but wearing clothes day to day, not, about to have sex, like wearing clothes that fit.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of another one that's in here.
Look,
Um,
I am a trad wife.
well,
No, okay, yes, I'm not a trad wife. And then, then reading some, like, Jessica Kane style smut because, if you have sexy thoughts, then you're all of a sudden like, "Oh,
that is
yeah."
assuredly not in here. Interestingly, I searched the word masturbate across the EV platform. The only things that reference masturbation are about how it's bad, or referencing news things with men masturbating. There is no self pleasure whatsoever. And of course, no mention of smut. And the only mention of pornography is how it's ruining your brain. So you got that one off.
Okay, so that took
You're
away a
not a trad
lot.
wife.
And then I really don't think I have another 7, I don't know.
Well, neither do they, to be honest. They have a lot of them that just seem like they decided that 10 was a good number for a listicle, and so they kept breaking it down because there's, like, wear makeup, which is different from keep on top of grooming, which is different from focus on embracing feminine fashion, which is different from focus on fit. So you did get kind of like a focus on fit. I don't think that you identified with their focus on feminine fashions, but that is a huge thing throughout here. For example, and you can Google if you're listening along the raw milkmaid dress that they are selling for $189. So it's this basically why I call it Sexy
It
Tradwife magazine.
kinda looks like you're gonna go to Oktoberfest in Germany, but paint it white?
Yeah, it's like a trad wife, like prairie girl kind of dress, but it's like the girl has very prominent boobs and it's very low cut. It's like if you cut the top off of a prairie girl dress and then put on like a Victoria's Secret push-up bra, I would describe it as. So they're big on feminine fashion, and a lot of that is about this conservative coded language of like embracing femininity, like women who are women and men who are men, and the women have to dress feminine in order to truly feel themselves and feel sexy.
Hmm.
Anyway, this is another thing that I noticed throughout everything that I read on Evie Magazine is that when it talks about you feeling sexy, what they really mean is how to be sexy for men. It had a 100% pick me girl vibe. They actually had an article that was like, why we think being a girl's girl is the worst. And they were like, yeah, everybody says that like girl's girl is the opposite of being a pick me girl and that you don't want to be a pick me girl. You want to be a girl's girl. But here's how being a girl's girl is terrible. And it forces you to be on a bandwagon where you support women no matter what they do or say. And I was like, Yes, I am on that bandwagon." Anyway, so then they were like, "Oh, it's the alternative to being a pick me girl." So then I'm like, "So you're saying you're a pick me girl?"
Like, and just like the 2, when it's
Yeah,
just a
there's only 2.
binary, there's no scale
Right,
there.
and all of that, that's another good point. Everything here is very binary. Either you believe in marital bliss and then everything to do with, like, traditional marriage, traditional gender roles, blah, 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 or you're a Cosmo girl and you're non-monogamous, you don't believe in marriage, sex can only be casual, it can never have meaning. So they always have this, like, very binary understanding of it, and they present themselves as an answer that they're saying, "Oh, Cosmo exists for everybody to just be non-monogamous and slutty, and so we're presenting an alternative for these women who are yearning for having great sex within the bounds of marriage." And that's why it's very glossy on the surface, and you might, like, skim through it, and it
It's
would
just
take
hard
you a
because
few
there's, like,
moments.
nuggets that don't seem bad there. Yes, feeling sexy within your marriage versus feeling like the only time that you get to, like, have fun and be sexy is when you're single. That's an idea that we can get behind, but then
Yes.
it's, like, larger that they couch it as just odd.
That yeah, I think that's partly, like, why it's a little bit insidious because just if you look at the packaging, I mean, first of all, it's very glossy, it is very attractive and sexy, and these very beautiful women, I will say, almost exclusively white women, like, conventionally attractive, thin, there are no fat women, there are almost no women of color. The only one I noticed going through their articles on social media was an Iranian woman who is an activist for women's rights in Iran.
Does she wanna be a part of that conversation?
Yeah, she probably wanted an interview.
Oh.
Sometimes there is that intersection in those kinds of areas. So anyway, I think that's where it's a little bit dangerous because it's this gateway kind of drug that you could start reading it and feel like it's very reasonable or feel like it is talking to you in a way that a lot of other traditional publications aren't speaking to you. And so I definitely felt like there were some articles that are just sweet and surface level. Like there was one called How to Keep Sexual Tension Alive When You've Been Together Forever. Um, and, like, since I'm not gonna pick up
Man,
Cosmo and, like, it is aimed at a younger crowd that is still single for the most part or, like, in dating relationships. So, I mean, I was like, "That's a nice idea on its surface to have content aimed at having a sexy married life." And this particular article didn't have anything that was, like, overtly Tradwife in it.
yeah, that's interesting because that is kind of a gap in magazines or websites that are out there, which is cosmopolitan, that is more for married women,
Yeah.
things like keeping the sexual tension alive, because that's content that I think that a lot of us want, but we don't want to pay money towards people who are anti-vaxxers, anti-birth control.
Right, because then it's like you start to dig in behind some of these gateway articles that you're like, "Oh, yeah, that is kinda nice. That's nice to have something aimed at somebody like me," and then you're like, "Whoa, this is not aimed at somebody like me," when it, has some of these other points in it that, yeah, you're like, "Oh, this is actually it's pretty far right," and even some conservatives have said that it's extremely right. It has posts that the New York Times called fringe even within conservative circles. So there's criticisms of no-fault divorce in there. There are negative articles about IVF, but because they make it so fun and approachable, like they have the headline, Amy from Love is Blind is right to be hesitant about birth control, like couched in this pop culture kind of way aimed at Gen Z. Another one that I saw, um, I was searching about stuff related to birth control, and I noticed that they do have a contributing person on their site who's a doctor, and I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. What's she a doctor of?" She is a board-certified OBGYN, who is the CEO of the American Association of Pro-Life
Oh,
OBGYNs.
okay.
And so it's
Yeah.
just kinda disingenuous because she writes this article about how she posed as a teenage girl and went to some online abortion pill websites to try to see how easy it would be to get abortion pills. And she said that she put in some things that would make it like obvious red flags that they should have referred her to see a doctor. And she's like, if somebody was saying this, like this could be a sign of an ectopic pregnancy. And so the like pretend teenager in question should have been referred for medical care. Um,
Well, the funny thing is that she's actually making, like, the wrong argument there, which is that that's why it's so important that people aren't shying away from the healthcare system and interacting with them for their
100%.
abortion versus that because, like, yeah, it could be an ectopic pregnancy and
Yeah, and I think that all of the stuff that they had on that really misses the point because the reason that a teenage girl would be going onto these websites is because she's afraid to go to her healthcare provider or maybe lives in a state where an abortion isn't an option. So the way that she presents it is like, "Oh, she should really just be going to talk to a doctor and getting proper care." But what she isn't going to say is that like under no circumstances, if I were that healthcare provider, would I offer her an abortion or, like,
yeah,
let that be an
exactly,
option.
and
And so instead, you want this, like, 13-year-old to just, like, go and have the baby or just, like, a lot of disingenuous stuff kind of right under the surface, but that's also what a lot of people pointed out is this sexy Trojan horse because rather than just beating you in the face with this politics and culture kind of stuff, it's packaged as attractive. So their goal is to quietly shape people. So like Emily Amick is a former staffer of Chuck Schumer and wrote a really great article about this. She says that it gets you in at these entry level articles. And once you've accepted the frame that sex belongs inside marriage, that marriage is between a man and a woman, that the progressive alternative is hollow and lonely, you have accepted a worldview with,
hollow and lonely.
yeah, no, it's like totally presented. There's this article in there why the child-free lifestyle is a total myth, which I know conservatives love. They're like, "All these women are secretly depressed, and they're gonna die so sad and alone," and I'm like, "Do you know any women who are knowingly or not know but who have, like, opted into being child-free when they would have had the option to have kids?" Like, they seem I mean, I'm sure there are some people that are unhappy. There are also moms who are unhappy, but, like, the
Many moms were
the
unhappy.
data
Yeah.
shows actually that, like, motherhood on the whole doesn't necessarily make women happier when they're in a situation where it's the relationship is inequitable, like, they have to do a larger share of the labor and things like that. So she says, like, once you accept all these things, you have accepted a worldview with significant downstream political consequences. You are gilding the lily for the Heritage Foundation's new policy document, Saving America by Saving the Family, a foundation for the next 250 years.
Oh,
And it's also a
thinking
project
big.
that Jessica Gross in The Times described as a way to take a time machine back to where women were financially dependent on men and gay marriage was not legal. And so she's like, they're kind of zeroing in on moderate, apolitical, exhausted women who might be like more attracted to the surface level of this content. And then within it, they find these messages. They're broken down by the lack of support for working mothers. But again, as you pointed out in that abortion article, it's like, kinda answering it with the wrong thing. It's like instead of more
Yeah, the
equity.
problem isn't that we are working and therefore shouldn't work in order to solve all of our issues.
Yeah,
It's,
exactly.
uh,
Which on that there was one particular article that I really dug deep on because they actually talked about having some research in here that they 100% didn't read. Rich women fake more orgasms, and it's not because they're bad in bed.
well, nobody thought the women were bad in bed. What
Well,
they
apparently
okay.
Evie thought that that was on the table. So the thing that they're referencing here is a tweet by someone named Chris Williamson. And all he says is rich women fake more orgasms. In couples where women out earn in couples where women out earn their partners, women are roughly twice as likely to report faking orgasms compared with couples where men earn the same or more. Research suggests this isn't about deception or manipulation, it's about managing male insecurity. The key factor isn't income itself, but women's perception that their partner feels threatened or insecure in his role as provider. When women believe their partner's masculinity feels fragile, they report higher sexual anxiety, less honest sexual communication, lower sexual satisfaction, and fewer orgasms. Faking orgasms appears to function as a relationship smoothing behavior, usually to protect a partner's sense of competence and avoid conflict. In short, when a man's status feels precarious, sex becomes less honest, not more passionate.
How is this research done?
So
Do
he
we trust the
is
study?
tweeting a study that appear to be legit, and also his report on it is a little sensational. I'll get to it in a second. The article that Evie does, where they're reporting on Chris's tweet about the study, goes a telephone length even further to focus more on the fact of, well, women can't be happy in relationships because they're earning more if they're earning more than their male partner. And they're saying it's because, like, oh, the woman will have so much anxiety that she can't turn her brain off during sex because if she's responsible for the family's well being, then how is she supposed to just lean into her role as being this soft creature during sex and be able to, like, let her hair down and have an orgasm and let him pleasure her?
Why is nobody suggesting the obvious, which is that those women might just be busier and have more on their mind and not be able to fully relax themselves in the way to be like having an orgasm is something that
Well, right,
your
and I mean,
entire, like,
and, like,
mood
women
psyche for the
being
day depends
busy
on.
and have difficulty having an orgasm, I guess, is also, like, not something that's directly linked to whether or not you earn more than your partner, because you could earn, like, $0 and be a very stressed stay-at-home mom and have a hard time orgasming. It's also specifically about whether you would lie about having an orgasm or fake it to, ease your partner's ego, and that's what his tweet kinda seems to point to is more about this fragile masculinity part, and then if you go into the study, um, it is a study from the University of South Florida, and that really is just focused on the fragile masculinity part. So the study says the disparity in frequency of orgasms between men and heterosexual women has been linked qualitatively to women purposefully not communicating their sexual needs in order to preserve their partner's masculinity. So the main factor is not so much rich women, like wherever they get the rich woman part is completely conjecture. But in the study, it's the woman's perception of her male partner's fragility and his sense of his masculinity. And the study says the relationship is further moderated by the degree to which women believe manhood must be earned and can be lost through sex. So it's like 2 things in her study. It's whether the man has a fragile ego that he feels like he has to please his partner in order to be a real man, and 2, whether the woman perceives that that's, like, an important thing, like, making the man feel manly by being like, "Ah, you're so good at this missionary sex."
I can't
Um
even feel your penis because the G spot is made up, and that's not where the clitoral complex is.
Oh, yeah. Instead, they could have just read a book about the clitoral complex. In general, Evie is, like, so thin on stuff about how women achieve pleasure. Like, even if you're talking about not masturbation, but, like, things to do with your white husband that could, like, be pleasurable for you. It's just, like, all of their, like, dating, like, have a sexy night articles are extremely focused on, like, how you can appear sexy for your husband, always putting on lingerie, always doing your makeup, always looking sexy, and then the sexual tips and tricks that they do have is completely focused on, like, how to give him pleasure.
I feel like I'm still gonna be stuck on that tweet for a while or that study because I feel like it can be technically within, like, a woman's control to have an orgasm
Mhm.
during sex, especially with, like, a stable long-term partner. I don't know.
The the research is not about the orgasm gap. The
It's
research is
about
about
faking.
faking it or, like, whether you would, like, want to lie, and in the research, they asked the respondents what they would do in different situations. It wasn't like, "Oh, we," like, somehow, like, observed people having sex and then asked the woman afterward. The other thing when they're talking about in this article that they're like, "Oh," and then these, like, rich women who are, like, too distracted from their femininity by their, like, CEO jobs by women in this study, I just want to be clear, we are talking about a sample size of about 250 undergraduate women. So this researcher is at University of South Florida. She got a bunch of undergrads together and she asked them if they would lie about an orgasm in different situations.
At an undergrad level.
Undergrads. So none of these women are not the CEO of shit. So just like the level
Okay.
of conjecture that Evie takes this
This
to
is not
then
like they're at, like, Goldman Sachs
Right,
interviewing, like,
right, right.
top
Right,
executives.
so, like, the level of, like, telephone game that this article gets to and this is kind of indicative of, like, their whole level of journalism in this thing, like, so many of these articles, I could tell that they just, like, Googled a bunch of shit, threw things in AI. They specifically had an article about using AI to improve your sex life, and it's of course, it's specifically Grok because they're conservatives. Um, and there was, like, one article that was parenting advice, but they just literally copied and pasted stuff off of Reddit, and they were like, "Another Redditor says this. Another
What
Redditor
is this, our
says."
podcast?
I know. I'm like, "Y'all have a way bigger budget than we do, so you have no excuse." But they spent it all on doing expensive photography shoots of woman in bridal lingerie, which is the front of their print magazines. That's the sex issue.
I still think that this is, like, all very interesting. I feel like if you asked me in college, I probably would say that I would, like, fake an orgasm to protect a guy's masculinity, and now that I'm grown, I would know, well, like, "Oh, I can make
That is
myself"
a really
yes.
other interesting thing, and I mean, I didn't, like, read the final conclusions and further research in this study if the author of the study was saying that, "Oh, maybe we should do more of like a longitudinal study to see also how much it's age based." That, yeah, I feel like I was also much younger, like more likely to fake it because you're like, oh, you're just like supposed to be really pleased and make the guy feel happy afterwards. And then I was just, and it wasn't any
You
sense of
don't
their
know that
fragile
much about, like,
masculinity.
angling.
I think you're more of a pick me girl when you're younger. And anyway, so they do make the article about the orgasm gap, though. So your questions are relevant here because it says, we didn't realize that addressing the wage gap would bring about the orgasm gap, which again, likelihood of faking orgasm, very different, like how often you're having an
College
orgasm.
kids.
They're college kids. And also, like, author of this article, the orgasm gap has existed since the dawn of the patriarchy. I mean, think about the
Oh my gosh, it used to be so much
1930s
worse.
study that we referenced in the last episode, whereas 2% of married women were having orgasms. So it's actually like,
It's gone up since we started
if
working,
you're
right?
just looking at correlation, the wage gap has decreased since the 1930s and the orgasm gap has decreased. So, if anything, if you're going just off of wage gap versus orgasm gap, I would actually say that they move together. And then they have this article citing a bunch of statistics that basically, like, oh, we have achieved feminism now. There's more women in the workforce than there ever were. More women are earning degrees than men were. And yet, still, we can't be satisfied in bed. So, what now, feminism? And I'm like, but the wage gap still exists in the majority of relationships. Like, women don't
Yes,
out-earn
there
their
is it
partners.
is by no means the norm for women to out there in their
I know, so they,
partners.
like, don't talk about that at all. Like, they're just very like, "Oh, we've already, like, achieved everything that feminism set out to achieve, and you're still unhappy, so, like, you should maybe choose something different now that could actually make you happy." I particularly liked then, to wrap up this article, Kay, that they talked about our subconscious desires as shown by like what kind of romance novels we read. This is your
Oh
wheelhouse.
dear.
So it says, that we're only like, if you look at what women read romance novels about, we're reading for men who lead, protect, and take charge. And so that's like what we truly desire because that's what we're reading in our romance novels, which you and I have talked a lot about how we might read about romance novel things that are or smut things that we do not want in real life. Because 'cause I'm like, do we also want men with a
Brooding.
y yeah, do we want men who have, like, 6-foot wide wingspan and, like, a
I
three-pronged demon dick?
Yeah, I definitely do not need wings in bed, and I definitely do not need the penis that's the size of a tennis ball.
Sparkling we don't
Dangerous.
need sparkling vampires. We might enjoy fantasizing about these things without actually wanting them, and I feel like it would be more relevant to see, like, what kinds of traits women pick in their actual life partners, and that's not,
Well, and I also
brooding
think that
or
there's things
controlling.
like, like, if you think about, like, the sub-dom relationship during sex, it's, like, for that specific sex, they call it, like, a scene. In that specific sex
Yeah,
scene, that is what they want, but as soon as that is over, then the woman wants to go back to being, like, very respected and equal and all
yeah.
that. It is a specific
Or, I mean,
target
same
for
if
that.
it's the other way, if the woman is the dom
Oh,
and the man is
yes.
the sub, like, you might not pick up on that in his day-to-day life that he really likes to be dominated in the bedroom because that might just be a particular fantasy he likes to live out within certain boundaries,
Paul Giamatti's character in Billions, yeah.
Mhm.
He has his wife, pee on him. Yeah.
Yeah, so they say outlearning your partner pulls you away from femininity and distracts you so you can't feel sexy. And that you need to be able to turn your brain off around men to get into sexy time, which you cannot do if you make more money than him.
You
because everything
cannot
depends on
do.
you.
You just can't.
And also they were, like, inferring that, like, if you make more than your partner, that you're, like, the sole breadwinner and your husband is just, like, staying at home watching TV, and I'm like, I also a lot of the relation I mean, I do know some stay-at-home dads, and I know a lot of relationships where, like, the woman does make more than the man, but the man also has a job and, like, makes
Feels
money.
yeah, contributes to society. Not that you contribute to society through there, but, like, has, an 8 to 9 hour a day full of responsibilities.
Yes. Anyway, so a lot of I focused on the sex articles for the most part. I mean, there was a lot of unhinged stuff in there, like fashion advice through to like other kinds of lifestyle things. The parenting advice was, as you would imagine, very anti-vax, anti-typical medical interventions that are backed by science kinds of things. Um, so yeah, and like I said, the sex advice was very much like dolling up, being sexy for your husband. I even felt like that 10 ways to feel more sexy. I went through them and I was like, I mean, some of these could make you feel more sexy. A lot of them were just about like feeling good about yourself,
Yeah.
which can make you feel sexy.
You don't need to tell me to dress up in 8 different
There
ways.
are very few things about how to like basically preheat your oven before you're with your husband, especially if he's bad at foreplay. Like that didn't make it on the list because obviously you can't like masturbate or look at porn at all. Um, there is some 18 plus stuff. They have it explicitly content marked as 18 plus. If you saw this advice in Cosmo and you asked me to guess what year of Cosmo this came out with, I would have said 78. It was very basic level. Like there was one where it's like, oh, and then tell him you're going to give him the best blowjob of his life. And they're like, here's a tip I heard from a friend from how to do a good
But then
blowjob.
you have to do that.
Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
will say that they are very, like, non-missionary, like, it's like you should be it's the total, like, you should be a lady in the streets, but a freak in the bed, like, you are a complete, like, virgin, buttoned up, don't have a thought about sex other than maybe how to please your future husband until your wedding, and then after that, like, you are an absolute freak for your husband and your husband alone. So, they do have a lot of stuff in there about, like, different positions. There was an article on how to give your husband a lap dance, which I feel like AI wrote. Um, but it's all for fulfilling the goals of your marriage, which is to like please your husband and have babies. Like
I would
there's
just
very
love to
much like
see it be
fetishization of pregnant women with like pictures of men kissing pregnant bellies and like celebrity news about hot pregnant celebrities and stuff.
I would just love to see, like, the average EV reader and their husband and these, like, I don't know, very, like, average Joes getting their, like, wife all of a sudden showing up in their, like, farmhouse dress, giving a lap dance and saying, "I'm gonna give you the best blowjob of your life."
Giving him
What the fuck?
a milkmaid lap dance. Yes. So I don't know. And then it was just like very mixed in. Like even the articles that did have sex stuff, a ton of it would be about like how to plan a perfect date night. And then it would have like, 7 different ideas for like planning different dates. And do you think that maybe it would be sexy if your husband planned dates more? Well, you have to accept the fact that like you're probably good at stuff and he's good at stuff and you should let him be good at the things he's good at, which is obviously not planning silly little
Well,
dates. And then you should go on Grok and
see, this is again, there's some pieces of that aren't bad advice. Like, if
uh-huh.
you genuinely like planning dates and it's just not where your husband is, they show their love in other ways. Don't sit there and expect that your husband is gonna, like, plan the type of date that you want, or if he does plan it, he's gonna get, like, extremely overwhelmed and book you, like, 70 different things because he doesn't wanna F it up.
Are you speaking from personal
Yeah,
experience?
he's like, "I'm not exactly sure, so I got us 5 different things that are all refundable, but they're all possibly great, but also possible that you don't want any of them." So in that case, it's just like, "You know what? I know that I just wanna take the water taxi over to Fells and grab a beer at Max's, and so I will book that for us."
That is fair, but I think just completely dismissing, especially when to me it seems like some of the husbands, it's selective incompetence. Like, well, babe, like you do such a good job loading the dishwasher, and I'm just so bad at it, babe, that you should probably just load the dishwasher from now on. I mean, in that case, it's an easier example because obviously no one gets joy that I know of out of
I
loading
was
the
not
dishwasher.
saying that
But
I was not saying that the advice was correct. I was saying that there's, like,
yeah,
a nugget in there, which is that, like, if there is something that, like, you really like and is really important to you and you like to do it, then I don't know.
Yeah, I
If one of you is excellent at cooking, then the other one of you should be
fair.
cooking 50% of the meals because then
Fair.
you're both
And as long as you're
losing.
not assigning that based on gender roles, which in my house we don't.
If you
But
would
I
both suck at cooking, then neither of you cooks
Well, that's
anymore.
kinda where I feel like in my household it comes down to with date nights. Like, I enjoy planning things, but I just constantly put it off and get disorganized and just, like, ADHD the fuck out. And so I feel like there are a lot of things that it's like there's just never been any expectation that Mr. SJ would have to do those kinds of things, and I had the expectation that I should do them, so I do it, but then I get stressed out, and so I felt like that was kind of a helpful exercise for our marriage for me to try to push him, like, not every other, but every once in a while. One, to just kind of understand that, like, it is difficult. It requires more, depending on what you're doing, it requires more organization than you think. Just so that they can respect, like, oh, that actually, like, does take a lot of work so that when I plan it, then he can appreciate that. And just to have, like, a little taste of it. And also, he has ended up planning some lovely dates when I feel like you, like, put him out there, like, fucking figure it out. You've got AI on your phone too, and there's a whole article here about how you can use AI to, plan your dates or write your sexts for you, which the idea of Grok writing my sexts is terrifying. And I'm like, "If you can't write your
But
own
I might
goddamn
try it.
sex."
I don't know.
Okay. Well, 1, you were supposed to try the, Beverly Whipple
I
matrix
did
of
forget to try the
Okay, so
Matrix.
you have homework on that, and I would also like you to try the homework of sexting Mr. K with AI written sexts,
Mm-mm.
and see how they stack up to your normal ones.
I can do the grok sext, and maybe Mr. K will see it 4 days later when he checks his text. I did inform him, I said, "Hey, do you think that I or most women feel it when you come inside me? Like, do you think that we feel that splooge and, like, loss and everything?" And he's like, "Well, like, yes, of course." And I was like, "Not at
Mm.
all. We only feel it when it actually comes
And
out."
in fact, if you sit and touch our inside of our vagina with a probe, only like 14% of us can feel that sensation.
Yeah, that's why it's all
Today you
about the
learned.
pressure and angles and positioning. It's really an art.
Well, then I think with that, that's a great way to kind of wrap up my review of Evie Magazine. We peer reviewed it and decided it was shit. I do want to wrap with a quick book review of one that I recently finished that I actually feel like is very relevant to this topic. I just finished reading Yesteryear by Carol Clare Burke. Did you hear about or
Yes,
see the
Anne
buzz?
Hathaway already optioned the rights for the book, correct?
Yes, and
Yes.
then I learned Anne Hathaway was involved in this from the beginning, like, she thanks Anne Hathaway in the book acknowledgments that she's like, "She was an early supporter, and, like, without her, I don't feel like this would have come together." And when I read that, the
It's
book
cool.
made a lot more sense to me too.
So it was written to be a movie.
Yeah, like, I would say that my general review of the book is that it is a very tasty thriller that you could, like, devour in under 24 hours, and you'll be, like, very interested. But like eating the marshmallowy, fluffy dessert, I think that you'll, like, come away feeling a little bit hungry and dissatisfied with the full thing, even though you're very into it while you're reading it. So I was hoping for it's this book about this like trad wife that kind of like wakes up one day. She's a
But
trad wife
they don't
influencer.
really, like, bring home the full message then,
Yeah,
or
so it's like she's obviously supposed to be inspired by Hannah Nealman, the Ballerina Farms Tradwife influencer, like kind of one of the originals. So it's mostly focuses on her life as in the present as the Tradwife influencer with like a lot of flashbacks about how she got to where she is. And not a lot of time spent in the like time traveling portion of the book. But she does like the idea is that she wakes up and it's like 1855 or something, and she's thrust into the past. One reviewer said that they were, like, kind of hoping it would be Tradwife Outlander, and I was like, "Honestly, that's the same." That's what I was picturing, is that it would be
I thought it would be, like, very much so her in the 1850s,
yeah,
the
and it would be,
majority of
like, in
it.
this idea that you, like, learn things by going to the past, but you also, yeah, like, develop significant relationships. It's not that at all. Actually, very little time is spent in that, like,
Oh, I totally
time
thought
travel
that she was
part.
gonna get, like, a boyfriend in the 1850s and
Right, or that she,
interesting.
like, actually at the end, like, gets into that life, even though in the present, it's like she's totally faking it in her real life in the present. Like, they have farm hands working on their farm. It's like they have this organic farm and then they have, like, pesticides that they, like, hide under horse blankets and things like that. So, obviously, like, a lot of the book is this critique about how that whole, like, influencer stuff is fake. Um, what I was hoping for was more of a breakdown of, like, the culture or the theology that leads Natalie, the main character, to embrace this lifestyle, and that's what's lacking from the book is that there's no
That more
critique.
nuanced
Yeah, on,
lifestyle.
like, what are the cultures that create these tradwives and create this audience of people who want to devour their Instagram pages, and the only followers that Natalie ever talks about is she's always, like, the angry woman, like, in caps, and she talks about, like, her college roommate from when she went to Harvard, and she's like, "Oh, I bet all these angry women are, like, hate following me, and they're gonna comment on my pages." But she never talks about the fact that the majority of people who follow.
Like the tens of millions of people who follow more because it looks pretty.
Yeah, because 'cause they're like they wanna emulate that for themselves, and then, like, how they're depressed when it's like they're trying to do it all for them. So, like, I thought there would be some commentary on how, like, the influencer mom is appearing to do it all, but behind the scenes, she's got 3 nannies and a producer and, like, farm hands, and that there are all these people who have this sense of, like, "I can never create that life like what I see online." Um, but she thinks that she's just, like she's a shitty person who, like which is fine, who thinks of her followers as just, like, all these angry women who are hate following her, because they're, like, secretly sad about their, like, feminist lawyer lives, which I'm sure they're in there, but, like, that
It
seems
doesn't dig into,
unrealistic.
like, some of these.
Yeah, and it doesn't dig into, like, what is her religious background. Like, she's in Utah, and, like, from some of the stuff, the context that it gives, you assume she's Mormon, but there's no context about, like, the Mormon, theology, and
Especially when it comes to, like, childbearing. That's a
yeah,
huge
it's like
part
she
of
gives
it.
little, like, clues about it, and actually, Carol Clare Burke said that she something along the lines of, like, "I did a little bit of background research on, like, evangelical religious stuff that, like, feeds into this tradwife things, but as I started to outline my story, I, like, stopped researching, and I just, like, put my head down and wrote based on these characters." And so she just straight up says, like, "I didn't do any research about, like, actual Mormons or these religious groups." And so
That's because, like, I've never thought that, like, Hannah Needleman, like, the Ballerina Farm lady,
mhm.
I've never thought that she seems like a bad person at all. I think
Yeah.
that she seems very, very genuine, but she's very genuine in, like, her set of beliefs, and I also think that she's really impressive in building this, like, enormous business, and so
Yes.
there's, like, just, like, these different pieces of this, which are that she's, like, Mormon, and this is how they're raised from day one and all
Mhm.
that, so
Yeah, I think it would have been much more compelling to have a character like what you're describing for Hannah Nealman, where she's, like, inherently, like, is likable and is coming at it from, like, a good place of, like, wanting to promote her values, even though, like, you might see her values as misguided. And instead, it's like this main character is, like, deep down, she just really, like, hates other people. She's really selfish. She comes from a family that's some kind of conservative Christian, but they're all good and they're sad that she's such a selfish bitch. So it made it less compelling because I thought there was so much of interest that you could build on there from like having somebody who is very earnest and believes what they believe, but here's how these beliefs can be played out in such a problematic way.
well, that's a bummer.
Yeah, it was a bummer. So I don't know, maybe the TV show will be or the movie version with Anne Hathaway will be better because it will just be, 2 hours of like the more thriller aspects of it. Um, it honestly did read a little bit more relevant for me after immersing myself in Evie for a week because I felt like she felt more like an Evie contributor than like an honest little like Mormon earnest trad wife who's out there like baking her own Cheez-Its from scratch because it did have much more of that like, oh, I'm not religious except in any way that I have like this sheen of religious kind of orthodoxy on me to help sell my product, and that's much more what the character in this book is.
That's a bummer because there's way more of a conversation to be had there, and it's not that especially, like, tradwife influencers, like, a lot of Christian women are extremely nice, kind people who are it's
Yeah,
like a cult, I don't know.
yeah, like in like a culty kind of thing that is honestly not even benefiting them, but they have a hard time seeing it.
Yeah.
And anyway, that was just there was a particular reviewer who grew up, I think Mormon, and said that she was like so disappointed by it because she was looking for that like kind of rich exposition on how that like harms women but teaches them that they're like doing something that is good for women. So That's kind of what I was looking for. I would recommend reading Educated by Tara Westover if you want something. She's not a Tradwife influencer, but like somebody growing up on this like extreme, like beyond Mormon family compound and like what that experience actually was for her leaving and going and being educated in the Ivy Leagues.
That
Um,
because I went to a Mormon Brigham Young museum. It was very, very random, in San Diego. It was free in the area that we were going to that day. So we walked in, and it was really, really beautifully run. One of the coolest, most
oh, yeah, they
interactive
want to
museums I've
indoctrinate
ever went
you.
in, and, like, ran by these wonderful, Mormon women in, like, their high teens, low 20s who were called sisters, and they
Mhm.
were, like, some of the nicest, most
The
pleasant
Mormons are
people.
always so
And they
nice.
were heavily teaching the story about how Brigham Young just came over to San Diego, and all the Mexicans that were living there were so happy that they came, and they were all just dancing together. So it was like, wrong message. These women are probably being taken advantage of by even being here. I'm sure they're not getting paid. But the story isn't that these women were bad people. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, much bigger than
Yeah, and
that.
that's, like, a much more like, them being bad people is not an interesting story. Them being people who are part of this, like, complicated teachings that both harm them and make them feel significant at the same time is, like, such a more interesting story, and that's why I recommend Tara Westover's book because she is so, empathetic and compassionate to her family, even, like, the ones who can't get out of and won't leave the kinda, like, culty background that she came from. And those are like the people who escaped cult books. Always the best ones are the ones where they aren't just looking back and being like, oh, those people are crazy and dumb. But like she truly understands where they're coming from and just like thinks of them with so much love and respect. And it just really demonstrates the maturity and the value of like the education that she got when she was able to leave her family. So, again, highly recommend that one. That's a nonfiction read, but it reads like a novel because it is fascinating.
Ooh. Well, thank you for
Any,
your
to close us
recommendation.
out this week, any smut this week? I guess you didn't try your Whipple matrix of, poking your
I did
partner in
not.
different spots.
I have started this book. It is a debut novel, A Web of Vows and Vengeance by Aria Ashbrook. And I have to say, like, it took a little while to get me in because I felt like the first few chapters, they wanted to make it clear that even though this is an extremely long book, it's still like a horny book and you're gonna get some romance in it.
Yeah.
But it made it that in the first few chapters, instead of like letting tension slowly build, like from like page one, she was like, oh, I totally want to bang this guy who I just bumped into on the street. But then she like totally switched gears after those first few chapters and became much more of like a subtle slow
Uh-huh.
burn. So loving it.
Huh.
Um, well, always great talking to you and learning from you, SJ.
Another great week of research into the dark web that
Well,
I
the
need to
G
go.
spot lesson is a lesson that keeps on giving. I've been like thinking of it during positioning and everything.
I love that you're
Ooh, we're
thinking
on
about me during
tension.
sex.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not
Me and
the,
Beverly Whipple
the lessons, strictly the content of the lesson.
and Dr.
today.
Grafenberg. Thanks, Dr. Grafenberg.
Yes, thanks to all. All right, well, thank you for listening. Bye.